The effects of the Birmingham bin strike have been declared a major incident. They are a national embarrassment, and with 21-degree temperatures forecast later this week, will become a public health emergency. With Labour MPs in Birmingham busy campaigning for an airport in Pakistan, and the Secretary of State unwilling to visit the city or take on the Union Unite, is that because of the tens of millions of pounds her party receives from Unite, or indeed the £10,000 she's received for her own election campaign?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thought the Shadow Secretary was beneath that and better than that, but hey-ho. Look, this is a local dispute, and it's right that the negotiations are led locally, Mr. Speaker. We've been clear that both parties should get round the table, and I'm pleased that this happened on Sunday and talks continue today.
She still doesn't explain why she's not visited the city to look at this firsthand.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I thought he was going to do better, but he didn't. The minister was in Birmingham on Thursday, and I'm always happy to visit Birmingham. It's a great city, and it's always been a fantastic place, and I've probably been there more times than the honourable member has, actually.
Parliament turned into a full-blown spectacle today, with Starmer right at the centre of it all. The chaos began when an opposition MP tore into Labour's freshly polished manifesto, ripping apart its promises one by one. The chamber, packed with MPs, erupted into laughter, not because the remarks were particularly clever, but because no one could believe how far the government's story had been stretched. What was meant to be a clear blueprint for national progress suddenly became a punchline. This reaction went beyond routine political theatre, as that laughter felt like a warning shot aimed directly at the Prime Minister and his cabinet. For weeks, critics have accused the government of dressing up the country's economic struggles with flowery language and carefully selected numbers. Unemployment is creeping upward, inflation continues to bite, and debt keeps ballooning. Yet the official narrative still insists on selling an image of recovery and stability.
Labour doesn't have a grip on our economy. Last week, I talked about Labour's mess on inflation and welfare spending. This week, there's more bad news. We found out from the ONS that Labour borrowed £20 billion in June, in just 1 month. That's a hell of a lot of money. It's one of the biggest borrowing sprees on record. Labour is now spending £100 billion a year just on debt interest. Twice as much as Britain spends on defence. That's extraordinary. That would be bad enough in normal times, but now borrowing costs so much more. And what that means for you is bills rising, mortgages staying high, and people wondering, is work still worth it? It doesn't need to be like this. Conservatives didn't get everything right in government. You know that. I know that. But we brought the budget deficit down year after year until the pandemic, with discipline and responsibility. That meant wages rose, inflation came down, the UK economy became the fastest growing in the G7 when we left office. Things got worse when Labour got in, because they won't make the difficult decisions. The only answer they have is to tax you more for worse services, higher prices, and a shrinking economy. Labour and Reform offer the same thing: more borrowing, more debt, more taxes. Only the Conservatives will make the tough choices and back the people driving Britain forward.
But the real shock wasn't the ridicule itself, it was what followed straight after. Angela Rayner was pressed on a long-delayed report into grooming gangs and the government's handling of deeply sensitive cases. Rather than showing urgency or real transparency, Labour figures came across as evasive, seemingly more focused on pushing the issue out of sight than confronting it head-on. That hesitation only poured fuel on the scepticism already simmering in Parliament, where MPs from both sides were starting to question what else might be quietly swept under the carpet. And now it's time to break down why that laughter could turn out to be the least of Starmer's worries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I begin by warmly congratulating the Prime Minister on his first year in office, acknowledge that the Labour manifesto was beautifully written, deeply moving, and like that other great blockbuster of hope and redemption, The Salt Path, a total pack of lies. With joblessness, inflation, and debt ballooning, his personal ratings collapsing, and his backbenchers on a work to rule, could the Prime Minister recommend a summer recess read in order to take all our minds away from the calamitous journey on which he and the Chancellor have embarked?
I think most of their backbenchers are already on their summer recess, looking at the benches opposite Mr. Speaker. We are very proud of our manifesto. It was a very successful manifesto, giving a landslide victory, and now we're very proud to be implementing it.
As the chamber settled, Graham Stewart took the floor, making it clear he wouldn't ease the pressure on Starmer. He noted cracks in Labour's leadership, falling approval, a shaky economy, and backbench MPs more focused on coasting than defending their government. Stewart slammed the manifesto as a glossy illusion now unravelling, failing to hide rising debt and stalled growth. He jabbed at MPs who already looked mentally checked out, leaving the government's defence weak. Starmer replied with his usual script, praising the manifesto and its rollout. But it did little to quiet murmurs, sounding more like a rehearsed speech than a real answer to Parliament's frustration.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The chair of the working group for anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia, Dominic Grieve, who was appointed by the Secretary of State, has a previously stated preference for a definition of Islamophobia that would shut down talk of religion in cases like the grooming gangs scandal. All other members of that committee, again appointed by the Secretary of State, are adherents of the Muslim faith. Does the Secretary of State not share our concerns that their report and recommendations will be seen as predetermined and biased?
Secretary of State.
No, Mr. Speaker, I don't. And there's no blasphemy in this country because the last Labour government got rid of it. But this kind of, incendiary language, Mr. Speaker, is beneath the shadow Secretary of State.
Kevin Hollingray.
Language, I was merely stating the facts. That's the reality. She was right in one regard. Freedom of speech is on the line. The current position is that the report will be for the government eyes only and the decision on a definition will be taken in private. Would she at least commit to making the full report publicly available so it can be scrutinised by this House and elsewhere before a decision is taken?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as set out in the terms of reference, the independent working group will submit their findings to ministers. We will then consider their recommendations and set out the next steps. I would urge the members to let the independent group get on with their work, and if he has views, feed them in as part of the call for evidence.
Tension in Parliament didn't ease when attention turned to the government's handling of a report on Islamophobia and grooming gangs. Critics questioned the independence of the working group behind it, noting that most members had ties to faith or previous views on Islamophobia, raising fears of bias even before the findings were released. The bigger problem was the secrecy. Ministers said the report would first be reviewed behind closed doors, with no guarantee the public or MPs would see it. That revelation sent ripples through the chamber, seeming like yet another attempt to bury uncomfortable truths. Calls for full transparency grew louder, especially as trust in the government's willingness to tackle grooming scandals continues to erode.
Help to Buy helped 350,000 young first-time buyers. The stamp duty discount helped 640,000 first-time buyers get on the housing ladder, with discounts of up to £11,000. Both now scrapped. Is the Secretary of State pulling up the housing ladder behind her?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, it's staggering that the Shadow Secretary of State says that after so many people now can't get housing because of his government failed to meet their housing targets. We will have a mortgage guarantee scheme. We will build 1.5 million homes so that young people and people can get the houses they deserve.
Kevin Hollingray.
Well, try again. The manifesto promised to preserve the green belt, and then grey belt came along, which is supposed to be a few garage forecourts. Now it turns out that grey belt will mean 640 square miles of green belt are built upon, the size of Surrey. Is this simply another broken promise?
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I'll try again. Under the Tories, the number of homes approved on greenfield land increased nearly tenfold since 2009. Labour will be strategic in grey belt release, and we will have a brownfield first policy.
While Parliament wrestled with secrecy and accountability, another storm was brewing on GB News, one that could hit Labour's public image harder than a day of laughter in the Commons. Colin Rayner, a veteran farmer with nearly 50 years in British agriculture and a family farming lineage dating back to the Victorian era, accused Labour's Environment Secretary of misleading the public on rural policy and subsidies. For viewers, he was more than just another talking head. He represents the backbone of Britain's food supply. His message was blunt: decades of family farming are being pushed to the edge by a government that talks of sustainability but enforces suffocating regulation. In a heated, unfiltered exchange, Rayner highlighted initiatives he says threaten the agricultural sector, including the Environmental Land Management Scheme, which prioritises biodiversity over food production. While wildflower corridors and pollinator projects may look good on paper, they divert land from crops and livestock. Meanwhile, international carbon offset commitments funnel hundreds of millions abroad, leaving farmers in Yorkshire, Cumbria and Cornwall struggling to cover basic costs. Rayner summed it up bluntly: Britain's land that once fed the nation is being turned into nature reserves for photo ops, while imported beef and grain fill our shelves. The figures back his frustration. Since Brexit, small family farms have dropped by an estimated 10%, with the National Farmers Union warning that nearly 30% of farmers may sell their land within 5 years. Food production hasn't kept up with population growth, forcing Britain to import over 46% of its food, up from 35% a decade ago. Environmental advocates call this progress toward net zero emissions, but farmers see it as economic sabotage, hollowing out rural communities and pushing food prices higher for already struggling consumers. Rayner also flagged the rapid conversion of prime farmland into solar farms and housing. While promoted as economic growth and clean energy, the campaign to protect rural England reports over 3,000 hectares of Grade 1 agricultural land lost since 2020, a trend experts warn is undermining Britain's long-term food security. Rayner put it bluntly: "We are told we're the custodians of the countryside, but how can we be custodians when our land is sold to the highest bidder or turned into energy farms while real farming withers?" His words struck a chord not just with farmers, but with butchers, grocers, market traders and consumers seeing their bills rise. Across Britain, family-owned farms are closing or being sold, often replaced by multinational corporations or foreign investors prioritising profit over local resilience. In some rural areas, the average farm owner is over 59, and young workers are leaving for more stable jobs. Promises of sustainable growth feel hollow when barns sit empty and fields lie fallow. This frustration feeds into a wider sense that the government is out of touch, with Labour ministers accused of burying unflattering reports, including one on Islamophobia. Outside Westminster, these frustrations are growing among urban families facing higher food costs, small business owners struggling with supply chains, and rural communities watching centuries of tradition unravel. People want transparency, action, and leaders willing to admit when policies fail. The stakes go beyond polls. Continued frustration could trigger backlash in by-elections, local councils, and even the next general election. Farming touches national identity, cultural heritage, and self-sufficiency, and ignoring these voices risks alienating communities that have long stabilised British society. Rayner's warning is a stark reminder: beneath parliamentary laughter, Britain's farmers, already hit by Brexit, global market volatility, and rising costs, are being asked to bear the burden of environmental transformation without enough support. If nothing changes, the country could become dependent on imports not by choice, but because domestic farming has been regulated and taxed out of existence. The debate is urgent. Should the government release the full Islamophobia report to restore trust? Are Britain's farmers being sacrificed for political optics and international targets? Or does Parliament's laughter simply show how detached politicians have become from the people they claim to represent? Engaging with these questions keeps the conversation alive and sends a clear message that Britain's people, rural and urban alike, will not sit quietly while their future is negotiated.